Well, yes, Mr. Adegboruwa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, joins us via Skype this morning to weigh in on the legal aspects of the president's speech yesterday. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. Well, I haven't listened to that speech yesterday. Are there any legal challenges whatsoever with the part of the president's speech?
Well, thank you. I think all Nigerians heaved a sigh of relief that actions are being taken to contain the spread of the COVID-19 in Nigeria or any part thereof. So I, along with other Nigerians, commend the president for the measures taken, especially to arrest the spread of this monster. And so to that extent, I must commend also the governors, especially of Lagos State. Nothing can be too much to do to preserve the lives of our people, because the primary purpose of government, according to the Constitution, shall be the liberty and security of the people. And you can see the emotions from the president when he said that it's a matter of life and death. And he has reeled out various measures in respect of how to tackle this pandemic. So I commend the president. But having said that, we run under a constitution in our nation. And in particular, the president swore to defend that constitution. And so before a declaration is made, before a proclamation is made, it must be weighed on all sides to ensure that it's in total conformity with the laws guiding our land. And in this particular case, the Constitution. I have in mind Section 41 of the 1999 Constitution, which provides that every citizen of Nigeria is entitled to move freely throughout Nigeria and to reside in any part of Nigeria, and no citizen of Nigeria shall be expelled from Nigeria or refuse entry into any part of Nigeria. So for a president or a governor to seek to take a decision to affect the freedom of movement of any citizen, it must be in strict compliance with the Constitution. Now, yesterday's proclamation by the president has not given us the basis of that executive proclamation, whereby for 14 days people are to be locked down and cannot move. I expect, of course, that the president should be acting within the law. There are various ways this could have been done. A state of emergency could have been declared through a gazette promulgated by the president under Section 305 of the 1999 Constitution, because once there is likelihood of occurrence of an imminent disaster or natural disaster, the president could declare a particular area, to be infected, and then also declare a state of emergency. 2 days thereafter, he will notify the National Assembly of that declaration. But this was not the case yesterday, because the president did not declare a state of emergency in any part of Nigeria. So to that extent, I am concerned. And my concern is because the law speaks the same language in terms of war, in terms of life, in terms of death. So for you to seek to restrain the movement of citizens, there must be a basis in law for that. Even though it's desirable for us to be able to curtail the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, I believe the president should act within the law, as done in other jurisdictions. In UK, the prime minister got the approval of the parliament. In America, the president got the approval of the Congress. Even in South Africa, they all got the approval of the parliament. And the second point I like to raise is this. We run a federation, whereby we have the federal as a coordinating unit. The governors of the various states were elected by their people as their representative. So I don't think it is proper for the president of a federation to rise up and then give directive to close movement or lock down a particular state without the input or approval of the representatives of the people of that state through the governor or the House of Assembly of that particular state. Now, in the president's speech yesterday, he said the governors of the states affected are being notified. In other words, it's a decree. It's a proclamation. Their input is immaterial. They will only be notified. I don't think that's constitutional, or it's within the expectations of our constitution to run a federation in that way.
So if those governors in question had given their input, or they were aware or in agreement with the president before this happened, how should that have been reflected?
The best way to have done that was for the president to work with the governor, and then the governor will work with the House of Assembly of those states. Because even though I say that the liberty to move is a fundamental right, the Constitution also gives room to derogate from those rights in cases of emergency, as we have at hand. But it must be through a law that is passed by the House of Assembly of that state or by the National Assembly. So what I expected the president to do was to liaise with the governors of those states. For instance, in Lagos State, measures are already put in place to contain the pandemic. The governor has been very active on a daily basis, together with his commissioner for health. Organizations have contributed money, markets have been shut. So measures have been taken in Lagos, for instance, which are very effective. And it will have been proper for the president to work with the governor of the affected states to see how they can synchronize the measures being taken. But surely, in a constitutional democracy, we cannot have a president that is lording it over the governor of a state. Yeah, for God's sake, we're not under military rule. We're not running a unitary government whereby directives come from the top to governors. These governors are elected by the people of their state, and they're empowered by the Constitution to be the chief security officer of their states. So it's not a matter of giving directive or information. There has to be a working together in line with the governor and the houses of assembly of those states to approve whatever measures to be taken.
In other words, what you're saying is that that part of the president's announcement is of no effect, even though the authorities are seeking to implement this already.
You know, the concern is this. When you give a declaration, it's expected to be complied with. I mean, if the president says, I lock down Ogun State and Lagos State for 14 days, everybody should comply. But in cases of non-compliance, that's why we're raising the law. If, for instance, I go out tomorrow and I'm arrested, under which law will I be prosecuted? Is it under the declaration of the president that is not backed by law? What would be the basis of arresting me, for instance, for seeking to move around when I know that there is no law that I have breached capable of being enforced? So this is what we say, that before we make declarations, we should look at the consequences of the enforcement, the capacity. I agree that we're in difficult times. I agree that there's need for serious measures to be taken because only the person who is alive can complain about law. But I'm saying this because of times when there will be no pandemic. And once we have this precedent, anybody can wake up any day to declare a state of emergency. Governors are locking borders between their states without consideration for the fact that people may need that state to access their own state. You are denying them the right of movement. There must be a law by the House of Assembly of that state that can empower governors to make proclamations, not just over television, over radio, and you circumscribe everybody's right. People talk about Quarantine Act. I have looked at that act. It has nothing to do with restriction of movement. It was an act that was made in 1926 by colonialists who were scared that natives in Nigeria could infect them with diseases. And so they made that law to protect themselves, but never to restrict any movement. And if you can see that act, you see it has to do with ships. It did not anticipate aircraft. It did not anticipate motor vehicle as far back as 1926. So we cannot find basis under such archaic law to say you restrict people's movement. But there is a basis under our constitution. The president will declare a state of emergency because of an imminent natural disaster. And he will inform the National Assembly. And he will also liaise with the governors of the states who will make a request for him to declare a proclamation of emergency in respect of those areas affected. This can be done. I held a meeting on Saturday online with 31 persons. Decisions were taken. We didn't need to gather in a particular place. So the emergency we have at hand can still be dealt with under the circumstances we have found ourselves. We speak because of the future.
Now, one of the issues, I think you just alluded to it, and that's the input of the National Assembly in this, according to the Constitution. Some people say that, look, if the president was going to do that, he ought to have consulted with the National Assembly. But then you also are not unaware that the National Assembly has since suspended, their meetings for a while. How would that have taken place, given the fact that the National Assembly is on suspension? Well, it's not sitting at this point. What do you think the president could have done in that regard?
What the president needed to have done was to, first of all, make a proclamation based on the advice I got from the Minister of Health and the National Center for Disease Control, I now declare that Lagos State and Ogun State and FCT are areas infected by a natural disaster. So based on that legal basis, he will then make a proclamation in a gazette to say that I declare these areas as areas of emergency. There will be no movement, there will be no commercial activities. After he has done so, 2 days thereafter, he will inform the National Assembly and send a copy of the gazette to the National Assembly through the heads of those houses. That's the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Upon receiving that information, those leaders will then take measures to consult with themselves and convene a meeting to be able to approve. This all will require, in the national interest, because of the emergency that we have at hand, and then give approval to the presidential declaration. So I have nothing against the president taking a decision, and I support him fully.
But Mr. Adegboruwa, one of the things the number of people might also say is, look, democracy has its bureaucracy, and for the president's decision to be going from one table to another might be eating up time that we do not have. How do you respond to that?
Like I said, law speaks the same language in terms of emergency and in terms of normality. We should understand that if we take these measures and allow it to fester, in future, it may be used as a precedent when even there is no emergency. And that's my own concern. After the right to life, the next is the right to liberty and movement. Before you can restrict the movement of any citizen, there must be a basis for it in law, and there must be a backing for it also in law. So we cannot use emergency as a reason to subject ourselves to dictatorship. I do not support that at all. But I support the president for the measures taken. He should look for ways and means by which he will give legal backing to the measures he has taken, which are quite robust, commendable, and very detailed. I support him wholeheartedly, but I do not support him because, as at now, those measures are illegal.
Are you saying that Nigerians should disobey or disregard that order? Is that what you're implying?
No, I do not advocate any breakdown of law and order. Actually, my own campaign is directed towards the president, the Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Justice to all work together. He has 2 days from yesterday to inform the National Assembly under Section 305 of the Constitution and give legal backing to the robust and very commendable steps that the president has taken. I do not canvass that people should disobey the president at all.
Because, I mean, looking through that particular address by the president, you'll also notice that the president did not specifically mention any form of punishment, as it were, for anyone who breaks that order. So maybe that lends credence to what you're saying. Maybe this is not entirely an order, as it were.
Under our Constitution, especially Section 36, nobody can be tried, arrested, except in accordance with a law that is in force, which prescribes clearly the offense and the penalty. So the declaration of the president as made yesterday does not constitute a law. So nobody can really be arrested or prosecuted for breaching that law. But like I said, I do not canvass a breach of the law. My campaign is towards ensuring that we support the president to give legal backing to all that he has said yesterday so that we can all enjoy it and then give full benefit for the purpose for which those declarations were made.
Images of residents, people who wanted to enter their states, but they couldn't because the state governor for some of those states in question had announced a closure, a lockdown, restrictions, so people can't access some of those states. But then, concerning those directives by some of those governors, including, for instance, I think I heard that of Ogun, where they say that they had closed the borders, including the one to Benin Republic. So there were some who argue, saying, look, do governors actually have the right to, where does this stop? Can they close international boundaries, or do they limit themselves to local boundaries? And how much of a challenge will that be if they have to also, people are applying federal roads? Can they intervene and stop them from moving on those federal roads as well?
Well, first is to note that under Section 8 of the Constitution, matters relating to boundaries of states is outside the purview of the power of that particular state, whether the governor or the House of Assembly. I mean, you cannot take any decision that relates to the boundary of a state without the approval of the National Assembly. So to that extent, I believe that no governor has the power in law to make a proclamation that affects the boundary of his state with another state. And having said that, I appreciate the enormity of the challenge we have at hand, because if our border had been closed early enough through legal proclamation from the federal government, or if our airport had been closed early enough, most of these cases that we have now would probably never have happened. So to that extent, I appreciate the difficulties that the governors have. But having said that, you do not make proclamations to give solutions by creating further problems. I saw the video from Bayelsa where people said they have been on that same spot for 3 days. For God's sake, there might be amongst them that have emergency cases. A man said his wife is pregnant. So we should look at those specific situations to ensure that we don't create further crisis for our citizens in trying to bring solutions. For any governor to impose curfew on the people of his state, he has to have the backing of the House of Assembly of that state through a law duly promulgated by the House of Assembly. Now, I have seen the regulations signed by the governor of Lagos State on the 27th of March 2020, seeking to restrict movement and arrogating powers to himself concerning certain decisions. With all due respect, and I say it, I commend Governor Sanwo-Olu in particular. Myself personally, I've been very, very impressed with the decisions taken by the governor in these past few weeks. But having said that, the governor has no power under the public health law of Lagos State to make a regulation that will restrict people's movement, because the public health law has nothing to do with movement restriction. It's the preservation of life of those who are suspected to have been infected with any disease. He can go there and remove those people forcefully and force them to go to a public health institution to be treated. But nothing in that law, 70 sections in the public health law of Lagos State, not a single section empowers the governor to make any regulation to restrict people's movement. If he has to restrict movement in accordance with Section 45 of the Constitution, he will do so in conjunction with the House of Assembly of the state, with a law duly passed and reasons duly given, and it will be itemized and specified before anybody's movement can be restricted. So I believe the governors are acting illegally in seeking to impose curfew on their people without the approval of the House of Assembly of their states. But I appreciate the enormity of the challenge we have at hand.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Adegboruwa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. So